Number 13, because today we have the most wonderful, wonderful guest speaker. Not only a guest speaker, but a great person that I'm so glad is in our fashion industry, but especially the intimate apparel. Intimate apparel, you don't know, I always heard were the gentlemen of the fashion industry. But before I go into that, I want to say a few things about Mr. Morris, and then he will tell you the rest. Also, I had a request for some interns, so you'll have to come to the office because I don't want to waste time going into it right now. Students interested in working for Sergio Rossi. Okay, come to room A639, only registered students, not guest visitors. Mr. Morris was born in New York and grew up here. He's been at the helm of two of the industry's most successful women's sleepwear companies over the past 25 years. He served as president of Valmont, which was really a fabulous lingerie company, from '86 until the company was sold in '96. As president of Carole Hochman Design Group since 2001, Mr. Morris has helped guide the company through major growth period and the development of the company's unique design and sales model, which I think is just extraordinary. They do the collections for Oscar de la Renta, Betsy Johnson, Ralph Lauren, Jockey, Chap, and on and on and on. I'm not going to go into too much already. I'm anxious to get Mr. Morris up here. But I have to tell you, he was an Ivy League football player, and he earned his BA from Brown University. And that's all I'm going to tell you. I want him to take this mic away from me. Are you ready? Thank you.
I'm going to raise this on you a little bit, Alice.
Yes, sir. They used to lower that podium. It wasn't working.
I think we got it. Okay. Good afternoon to everybody. I want to thank Alice for this wonderful invitation to speak here at FIT. I'm honored and pleased to be included in a fraternity of speakers that she has recruited that reads like a who's who of the design, retail, and manufacturing segments. Each of these individuals you've heard from previously, I'm sure, has brought you their unique story of their career paths and hopefully some inspiring messages that have hopefully helped or will help each of you in making your own career decisions down the road. I hope that in the next hour I can share with you my adventure of the last 30 years, and that in some way my story, choices, successes, and yes, definitely failures, will allow each of you to walk away with some inspiration, direction, or even a cautionary flag or two for the future. You in this auditorium are the lifeline of my industry and all its related arms of design, retailing, and manufacturing. Speaking for Carole Hochman Design Group, we hope that many of you will consider the intimate apparel industry as a possible career path. We are lucky to have many FIT grads amongst our 160 people here in the New York offices, and I even have one at home, as my wife is an FIT grad as well. Before I get started, I had a chance to see Professor Armilas today, who worked for Carole Hochman for many years, was a part of one of the most important businesses that we had, which was our Christian Dior business, which was the longest running Christian Dior licensee in the world for 33 years. And it's great to see Alexandra, and I know that any of you who might be involved in her classes are learning a lot. She is and was the last of a dying breed of designers that really knew how to design. Not just take pictures off the internet, not go to the stores and knock something off, but knew how to create. So any of you that are lucky enough to be in that class, listen, learn, and my guess is you'll find intimate apparel an interesting path for yourself. Good to see you. my story starts a little bit, very clearly from many of you as you come out of here in the next year to 4 years, I assume. You'll have decisions to make in terms of the kinds of companies you want to work with, that you want to work for, what part of the industry you want to be in, intimate apparel, sportswear, whatever it may be. For me, one of the interesting choices, and you'll see it as I go through my history a little bit, I chose to go down the independent, family-owned business path. Granted, it started because I had a family-owned business in the intimate apparel business, but it's about finding your comfort zone. It's one of the lessons that I want to certainly share with each of you today. As you come out, there will be opportunities. Find that area that you feel most comfortable with. Some of you are going to feel comfortable working for the big companies, working for the Liz Claibornes of the world. That may work for you. Others are going to feel much more comfortable working in a smaller, independent family environment, potentially, which I have always found, quite frankly, to be the more creative environment. And I think that so many of you are here at FIT today because you have a creative bent, and that's what you are trying to drive for your future. So think about that very clearly. That's certainly an important lesson that I want to share today. I had a statistic that I checked on the other day with one of the executive search firms, and it says that most of you in this room will have 12 to 14 jobs on average in your life. Sounds like a lot, but in those first 5 to 8 years, you will have most of them because you're trying to find that comfort zone and what it is that you're really, really looking for. So take the time when you come out of FIT here, based on what you've learned and what you feel good about, and find that comfort zone for yourself. For me, just some background. As Alice said, I'm New York born and bred. Growing up here in this area, I got some early exposure to the fashion business, as I said, because my family was in the intimate apparel business. Falmouth Lingerie started in 1937, and I had the opportunity to grow up and get some exposure early on to the business. It was a different time then. My father would take me to the factory on a Saturday, and lo and behold, I'm not too proud to admit I learned how to sew. There are certain things that you got some exposure to. You got the ability to be in the showroom and hear how people sold and develop styles and vocabulary and things that you heard people do. And granted, this was in the 1960s. Seems like a long, long time ago, but that exposure was terrific. In some ways, that was my internship. I grew up with that level of an internship, and it leads me circuitously to, and I'm sort of going out of order, but the internship programs that come through FIT here are just phenomenal. I was just telling Alexandra that this year we've hired 9 people that have worked for us on interns. We've gotten tremendous talent, and it is our lifeline. And not that I'm here to do an ad for FIT or for Carole Hochman, but it's been a wonderful connection. We've gotten wonderful kids that have come in, and certainly for me, that was my internship years ago, getting into the factories, getting into the showroom, and learning the business through my family. I would tell you, though, that I never thought by any means I was going to end up in the fashion industry. What I loved was reading and sports and movies. I figured I was either going to maybe be a football player, I hoped, or be a lawyer, because most salesmen think they're lawyers. And today you have to be a lawyer. So that sort of led me up to my educational time frame. I grew up in Harrison, went to Harrison High School, was lucky enough to have an opportunity to go to one of the best universities in this country, in Brown University, just as you guys are at the head of your class in merchandising type schools here at FIT. How did my family get into the intimate apparel business? It's an interesting story. I'll tell you one funny story, because my father told it to me years ago, how he ended up in the industry. My father was a very, very accomplished flyer in the World War II. He was a supply flyer, and he flew the supply missions from Italy, mostly Milan and Rome, over what they called the hump in those days, which was into Burma. Now, Burma no longer exists as a country. I think it's called Myanmar today. And my father, being the entrepreneurial son of a gun that he was, when he got to Italy, he hooked himself up with men who were making silk stockings. And it was tough to get silk stockings in those days. And he bought up silk stockings at a very, very cheap price, and he brought them back on the supply planes, which he was not supposed to do. And he sold them to the soldiers at I assume, a fair price, so that they could send them home with their letters to their wives, their girlfriends, their mistresses, whatever it may have been. He made a damn fortune selling silk stockings for 3 or 4 years. So when he got out of the Air Force, he had some money in his pocket, which a lot of people didn't in those days. And he was 29 years old, and at that time there was an airline which many of you probably don't even know the name of today, which was called Pan Am. And Pan Am offered him a job as a pilot, and he said, "You can't pay me enough. I'm making too much selling silk stockings." So that took him into the intimate apparel business, which he became one of the real pioneers at, and one of the legends in this industry in my mind. For me, coming out of college, when I realized that my dream of being a professional football player wasn't going to happen, being 5'10", small, Jewish, there's just not a lot of those out there in the professional football. And that law school wasn't for me. I wanted to get into sales. That's what I felt was my calling. The gift of gab. Other people may call it the gift of BS, whatever it may be. But I felt strongly and gravitated towards that. I got an opportunity early on which taught me a whole lot. My father said to me, and I hope every father would say it to a child who comes from a family business, "You cannot work for me for 5 years. You need to go out and you need to hone your own skills. You need to do something on your own so that, God forbid, you come into a family business and it doesn't work. You're not stuck." It was a terrific bit of advice. And I did not go into the business for 5 years. I got a chance to work for the most famous cartoonist in the world at that time, Charles Schulz, who most of you know as the cartoonist for the Peanuts comic strip, our lovable friend Snoopy, Charlie Brown, and all of that. And I got to work for a company that is similar to everything that I've done since, called Determined Productions out of San Francisco, California. And it was owned by a woman named Connie Boucher, who was, if you go to the library and you look at books back in the 70s, yes, we had books back in the 70s, and you talk great women entrepreneurs around the world, there'd always be a chapter on Connie Boucher, who really was at the start, along with Bill Blass and Pierre Cardin and some of those back in the early day, of understanding the power of licensing. You know, when I got out of school in 1978, licensing was really a very, very, very nebulous early on. As I said, Bill Blass had started to do it, Pierre Cardin. There was not a lot. Connie Boucher and what she had done in getting licenses from Mr. Schultz, from Friz Freelang, who did Pink Panther, the people who did Betty Boop, all of those things, she was way ahead of the curve, and understood the power of licensing. And for me, she was a pioneer in women's-owned companies. And that's sort of become a trend for me, with Carole Hochman as well. Powerful, creative women who are entrepreneurial in spirit and really are driven. You know, I loved sales in those days, but it was very, very different. And I'm going to take you guys back, and you'll see a slide later on, which to me is somewhat really telling, but it was very, very different, 1983. We had so many choices of customers to sell. You'll see a slide later that I sort of put together from my memory, but I came up with 126 different department stores that existed in 1983. Today, there's about 22. The names, when you look at the, many of my friends in the front row here will remember all of them. It's an amazing consolidation that's happened. But the interesting thing for those of you, depending on whether you're a designer, driven, retailer, fashion merchandising, whatever it is, it was very different. The thing that was most different to me is that they were true merchants. The people that were in the stores, the people that were in merchandising and buying were true merchants. They were about product first. They were product driven, and they weren't accountants, as in some cases today, buyers have been forced to become accountants. They were consumer-centric, consumer-focused, and they knew their customer very, very well. There were 2 sales a year. Let me say that again. There were 2 sales a year, in January and in July. Not 2 a week as there are today. The term markdown allowance had not yet been invented. Chargebacks were an anomaly, and they were the exception, not the rule, as unfortunately they become in many instances today. It was just very different. I didn't say it was necessarily better, because there's a lot of wonderful things that we've gravitated and evolved to today, very much from a product standpoint. We're far, far more creative from a product standpoint than we were in those days, obviously because of the evolutions in fabric and trims and detailings and findings and things that we can work with. It's much different and much better from that standpoint. The changing world of the late 80s, for me as I recollect it, store consolidation was dramatic. Multiple bankruptcies. Feels a little bit like what it is today, but it was only bigger in those days, because those of you now who are 19, 20, 21, you don't even know that Macy's went bankrupt, in 1987, and these things all happen. Today we're having bankruptcies, but not of the same magnitude, at least right now, but what could happen in the next couple of months or years is tough to tell. The store's leverage increased with the advent of markdowns and chargebacks, and obviously we had economic unrest in '87 and '88, savings and loans crisis, which all of you are hearing about in the campaign today with Senator McCain, who was involved in that. Not quite what we're experiencing today, but it's all relevant and all relative. But today is a little bit different than even '87 and '88. For me, in that time frame, at Valmode Lingerie, we found, and this is an important point for any of you, we found our niche as a company, as a premium maker of feminine, embellished satin sleepwear to department stores, and predominantly to Victoria's Secret during that time. They really helped put us on the map and keep us on the map. But we found a niche. We developed a strong core competency and skill set. And whether it's as a company that you do that or as an individual, whether, again, you're a designer, a merchandiser, sourcing, production, whatever it is, hone in on those core skill sets and core competencies and really get your arms around them, because that's what you're going to build your future on. We were lucky. We had good success, in the late 80s and the early 90s. Our company doubled in size from 20 million to 40 million, and we did quite well. As in any business, there were ups and downs, and what I always found is usually the downs that educate and prepare you the most. So the lesson I want to share with each of you from that standpoint is your failures and your mistakes are always the most instructive. Hold them close, analyze them, and don't make them the second time. It's the old adage, first time shame on them, second time shame on me. So don't be afraid to make mistakes. And I've heard that I heard it from my father. I've heard it from Carole Hochman. I've heard it from Neil Hochman. I've heard it from many people, including Mr. Charles Schultz, who may he rest in peace. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, but learn from those mistakes. Get your arms around them and don't make them the second time. Also, I learned some interesting lessons too, because at the time I was 29 years old, I was not ready to be the president of a $40 million company. But it was forced upon me because my father and brother died within a 6-month period. And it was there and it had to be done. I had 2 siblings still with me in the business, but my role changed dramatically. So my message to each of you here is, no matter what level you're at in a company, be ready and be prepared, as you never know when the opportunity or the call to action will present itself for you. You go into Carole Hochman or any other company as an intern. You show yourself to be very, very capable. That opportunity may come before you're ready or prepared, but be ready for it. You may go into that first job and your boss may get pregnant, may leave, and you may be thrust into a position that you might not feel totally comfortable that you're ready for, but you gotta work hard to be prepared. Be prepared. We owned our own factories as well. I owned a factory in New Jersey. I owned a factory in Mobile, Alabama. That was another interesting point in the late 80s and early 90s. The world was changing dramatically. The world economy was changing. Everybody was moving overseas. Today, all of you guys know that we make pretty much everything overseas. There is no domestic manufacturing. In the 70s and the 80s, there was a lot of domestic manufacturing. The sewing industry has dissipated here today. It really doesn't exist. Most people can go to work for McDonald's and make more than they can make in the sewing industry, unfortunately. And then obviously with the evolution of China, Sri Lanka, and all of these other countries that we all make product in, and price has become the driving force. The marketplace here in the United States for factories, sewing factories and apparel has really dissipated. That for me was always one of the saddest things, because I loved the people that worked for us. We had hundreds of people working for us in those 2 facilities, and they were terrific people who had been in the sewing industry for generations. The grandmother, the mother, the daughter. And that unfortunately dissipated. But what it taught me is that change happens, and once it starts, usually there's no turning back. The world changes quickly, and again, as we said earlier, we need to be ready and we need to be prepared to move with it. And I think that's what's happened certainly to our apparel industry today. It's changed dramatically in the last 15 years. And most everybody is making all of their product overseas today. I don't think, certainly not in my lifetime, will we see a rejuvenation of domestic sewing facilities and things of that nature. It's just not in the cards. We can't compete in terms of needle and quality, though we had terrific sewers in those days. We really did. Okay. Before I get on to Carole Hochman Design Group, the last thing I'll talk about is just the trials and tribulations of a family-owned business in the fashion industry. Because we've talked about it. I've been in 3 of them. Connie Boucher, my own family's business, and Carole Hochman Design Group. There are challenges in family-owned businesses. And there have been many successes, but there have also been many failures. When I started in this industry, again, I tried to recap it the other day sitting on the train. I could think of about 120, 125 family-owned, small, privately held businesses that existed back in the 70s. Today, there's a couple of dozen, if that. Consolidation, for the most part, but just people not having a niche, not having a core competency, and there not really being a need for them. It's unfortunate, but that is what has happened. What I learned is that sometimes siblings and family are the easiest people to work with, and sometimes they are the most difficult to work with. So anybody sitting in here who might be going into a family-owned business, take it from somebody who knows. It goes both ways. Given my choice, family-owned business, independent, I would still take anytime. Why is Carole Hochman Design Group a successful family-owned business for 78 years now? Because everything that I've learned and seen that wasn't done right, they've figured out how to do it right. I'm happy to be a part of that, a small part of it, but that's what we've figured out how to do. We've got ownership that has strong skill sets, strong experience, but unique skill sets and unique core competencies that are very different. One in Neil Hochman, a brilliant financial strategist, and one in Carole Hochman, who, to my mind, is the design guru of the intimate apparel industry. And I think Alexandra would probably agree with me on that. Somebody who for 38 years has managed to design and or help interpret more great brands than anybody in this industry. And I think that's why this business works, because the ownership have great skill sets that don't necessarily knock against each other and have tremendous respect for one another. So I'm very proud to be a part of that today. I sold my business in 1996 for a lot of reasons, some of which I've espoused. Family gets along some days and some days they don't, and it was also time to do something different. And I was lucky enough to have some wonderful opportunities, but I made the right choice. I came to a company that was consistent with what my history was and consistent with what I had found to be my comfort zone, which is about a company that is creatively and product driven. And of all the companies that I looked at and opportunities and offers that I had, this was the one that was about product and about design. And most of you here are probably about design too. And that was the fun part for me, to find a company that first and foremost, it's about the product, not about the price, not about anything else but the product and the quality of that product. I'm happy to say that almost 12 years later, that is still the mantra of our company. It's just in a lot of unique different brands that we're involved in today. So let me start to take you through Carole Hochman Designs and hopefully share some more points and lessons with you about what we've learned as well. Susan? Just briefly, some history. 78 years in business, family-owned business, but interestingly, and it's not on here, at one point this company became public too. In the late 60s, the Hochmans sold their company to a company called Harwood, which was a large manufacturer of men's pajamas. And just as my family had sold its company to a large public company called Cluett Peabody at one point, the same thing happened here. When you are entrepreneurial, when you're creative, you can't be constrained by a public company generally. And just as Valmont bought itself back from Cluett Peabody after 7 years as a public company, Neil and Carole Hochman bought themselves back from Harwood and went private again in 1980 after about 9 years, I believe, as a public company. And we are 78 years old now. Okay, Susan. We were 75 at the time Karen Manger wrote this article. Thank you, Karen. Maybe we can write one when we're 80 soon. I am going to leave a couple of press kits here with Alice for any of you that want to take a chance to look at it. There's lots of information in there. So we're going to just sort of be a little bit cursory today, but just so you can get a sense of what we're about. Okay. Basically, our timeline is really a testament to the talent and clear focus that has always taken place on design and product first and foremost. It started with Christian Dior, as we said, in 1964, longest running licensee in the world for Christian Dior of 33 years, and continues to this day. We're very proud of this. Carole Hochman is not only one of the largest female-owned companies in New York, as the next slide will show, it is the 42nd largest female-owned company in the United States. I work with, Susan, don't laugh when I say this, I think 95% women. I think we have about 15 men and about 145 women. So we are a company of women that designs for women. And that is a motto that Carole created many years ago. And Carole has been lucky enough to get some wonderful publicity over the years, and she is a self-made woman, has done a terrific job. And anybody that's come to our company over the years, she has always been so gracious in working with, but the people that she loves working with are all you young ladies and men who are in the design business. That's what she's about. It's about product. She loves to play with the fabric and play with the trims and drape the garments. She's part of that dying breed, right, Alexandra? Live well, sleep well. You know, our company is about comfort, first and foremost. Carole's brand is about comfort. It's about pretty. It's about quality. It's about beautiful details. You'll hear in a company like ours, and I think as design students, I'm sure you have heard it from your professors, it's all in the details. And that is really, really true. Particularly when you're making expensive stuff like us. We're not in the 2 for $29 business. Okay. Just some more marketing. It just sort of gives you a sense of our brands and the product. Now this is interesting for those of you who may not be aware of it as yet. And I think it's an important part of our message today. We've expanded our Carole Hochman brand. It has always been a traditional knit-driven business. But we had one of our major customers, which in this case happened to be Nordstrom's, who we think is one of the finest department stores in America, come to us and say, we love your brand, but our customer is more contemporary, and we want to evolve your brand into something a little different. And Carole was challenged to come up with a contemporary version of the Carole Hochman brand. And I would tell you, and I've told her this myself, that I think what she came up with, which we can spin to the next page, which is called Midnight by Carole Hochman, is the best design effort that I've seen in the 12 years that I've been there from her. She just nailed it. Contemporary, clean, beautiful. What you think or always thought maybe Donna Karan or Calvin Klein should have been, we've sort of nailed it. And it's selling phenomenally well, and it's not cheap. And it's selling well in an environment that not a lot of things are selling really well. So it really tells me that we've hit upon something that's right. But this goes to an important point. You have to expand your brand, but you have to do it intelligently, based on the knowledge of your consumer, your marketplace, and a lot of trend research. And also, as I just said from the story here about Nordstrom's, listen to your customers, the ones who you trust and who value your business. So that was an important story, an important chapter for us in the last 12 months and how this new business was developed. Some of you may, I hope, be on Gossamer customers. We make the best mesh panty in America. And we bought this company about 2 years ago. And again, it's another part of the story look for intelligent acquisition in your businesses today that can add to your portfolio but not create duplication. We didn't have a business like this. We wanted to become a bigger player in the intimates business. We had started Betsy Johnson, which I think probably a lot of you know and love Betsy as a designer. And we had a Betsy Intimates business that's doing really well, but we needed some more critical mass to our intimates business. So we bought on Gossamer, which is very, very different than Betsy and very different than really any other business out there. And it has added a lot of incremental business and opportunity to our portfolio. But most importantly, again, I'll emphasize, when you look at our portfolio of brands, they do not cannibalize one another. That has been the key to this unique business model that we've put together. Nobody else out there has 10 or 11 different brands in this industry. Plus, we have a very large private label business, which you'll certainly see some slides on. But the key is, don't cannibalize yourself. And we've done a pretty good job of doing that and not duplicating ourselves. Okay. We've gotten some great publicity on Gossamer. It's sort of a red carpet brand, along with Cosabella and Spanx and Hanky Panky and a few of those brands. We're in Us Magazine or In Style or In Touch, or I don't know all of them. My daughter reads all of them. I don't know them. But we're in there all the time, and it's sort of got that red carpet cachet, which is sort of nice. We then took the On Gossamer brand and did what we do with everything, is to make it a lifestyle brand. Add sleepwear to it. There was no sleepwear component. We added sleepwear to it. It's doing very, very well. Any of you who may be Bloomingdale's, Nordstrom's, Saks shoppers, you're probably familiar with the brand and what it represents. Sort of comes from that Miami Beach lifestyle. That's where the brand emanated from and started. And we've tried to stay, even as you see by that print, sort of in that Florida Miami Beach lifestyle. Okay? We keep moving. Unique brands. Lilly Pulitzer sort of fits a little bit more about our company and what I think is instructive about why, at the end of the day, I think we've managed to be successful. You look at the brands we've talked about. They're all authentic, they're easy to profile, and they've had great longevity. We haven't gone after any celebrity licenses for the exact opposite reason. They're not authentic in most cases. They're usually this far away from a scandal waiting to happen in those same magazines I talked about. We've been approached by all of them, and we've chosen to stay with brands that really resonate with the consumer for a long, long time. And I think any of you who are sitting in here as designers, you want to work with a brand that has some authenticity, that you can really get your arms around and understand, that you don't have to sort of make it up as you go. Though I'm sure that can be fun at times too. Okay? Lilly, a unique history, a great story. It's authentic, but even more than that, like Betsy Johnson, like Oscar de la Renta, like Ralph Lauren, you can't really knock them off because they are sort of what they are. You can't put another label on Ralph or Betsy or some of these brands because they are what they are. And we sort of like that. They design themselves, they have great authenticity, and it's not what Macy's is going to want to make or can make under Charter Club or Inc. or whatever it may be. We sort of make ourselves a little more important to our customers because we have a product that differentiates itself from what they're going to make themselves. Okay? Lilly's been a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. Oscar de la Renta, living, breathing legend. And that's the three words you start with. Just like Ralph, living, breathing legends. These guys just keep going. They remain so creative, so vital, so involved in their own businesses, and so protective of what is most important, their brand. And Oscar's it's a terrific company to work with, and again, like I said earlier, authentic, longevity. The customer knows the brand, and it has a lot of meaning. It really resonates with them. So we're very proud to be part of Oscar de la Renta as well. Okay. Just beautiful, beautiful feminine product. That's what Oscar's about. And that's really what our company is about when you go back to what I said earlier. Pretty, quality, beautiful detailing. It's what it is in pretty much across the board. And I think that's, again, why we have remained successful through the good times and the bad, is because at the end of the day, great value, great product that is consistent with what the label in that garment is. Well, I think Ralph sort of speaks for himself. To me, I'm a big fan. I think it's about the best brand in the world. I also think that they are the best branding company in the world. No one understands and protects the power of their brand better than Polo does. I have learned a lot in the last 6 years, 5-6 years, in listening to them, because they're right 95% of the time. They really understand their brand. They understand what their consumer expects of their brand. They understand quality and will not sacrifice on quality. And what that's done for us, and the lesson that, again, I'll pass to you on that, is that it has resonated throughout our whole company. It's made us a better company. And again, we were always about quality and design, as Alexandra knows. But we're even better at it today, because when you deal with companies like Polo and what the expectations are, it just trickles down. So again, I'm talking from a company standpoint, but hopefully I'm relating it to you as designers, as sourcing people, as production people. Whatever company you work with, embrace that methodology and mantra that they have, in the case of Polo, about quality and about brand, and it will trickle down to everything that you do. Okay? We've been lucky enough to grow with Polo and take on their new brands that they've created, obviously Chaps, and we've all seen tons and tons of TV ads in the last 6 months on American Living. And I just wonder at night sometimes what's the next thing that they're going to do. Who's next on the list? It's an exciting prospect to build a brand from absolutely the ground up, as we've done with American Living. It's a lot of fun and very interesting and challenging. Again, I would just, this picture, which I can't even begin to tell you how much it cost me to do, it's just all about the brand. It's all about who they perceive that customer to be and who the lifestyle of that brand is. We get it with Betsy, we get it with Oscar, we deal with all of our companies this way. But we've been lucky enough to work with companies who really understand their brand, and they protect it, and they lived by it. Nobody more so than Polo, for sure. Okay. Everybody's favorite, Betsy Johnson. I am not going to do a cartwheel like Betsy. I will tell you that right now. You'd have to call the ambulance. This has just been so much fun for all of our people. We have several FIT, recent grads and interns that are involved in our Betsy Johnson business. Everybody wants to be in the Betsy Johnson division because it's really fun. And Betsy has really allowed us to spread our wings. I'm sure a lot of you have walked into Victoria's Secret and seen our Betsy shops on 34th Street and many of the stores. I think the interesting, instructive thing about Betsy is that the only brand that Victoria's Secret has carried consistently for the last 4 years, as a third-party brand is Betsy Johnson. There have been a lot of others that have come and gone, and they shall remain nameless in this conversation. But the only one that's been there for 4 years straight is Betsy, because it is unique and it's fun, and I'm sure that there's not a young gal in here who doesn't love Betsy for what she represents. Okay. Jockey, terrific brand for us. Very different than all the other brands we've just spoken about. This is not a high fashion brand, but Jockey is it's middle America. It's a powerful, powerful brand. And how many brands have the name of their company that's really stuck in the American vernacular? I mean, you wear your jockey shorts. I mean, they really, over 125 years, have become a mainstay of the underwear business. So we do their sleepwear for them, and it's pretty traditional, it's pretty straightforward, but again, it's Jockey. It profiles to the brand, it profiles to that customer who is a Jockey consumer. Stan Herman. Some of you may know Stan because a lot of people forget he's a great designer, 3-time Cody Award winner. But people really know him because of the CFDA, which he was the president of for 16 years and probably, I think, is as instrumental as anybody for starting what we all know as the Bryant Park tents programs that goes on twice a year. Stan was really at the core of that, I think that's fair to say. And really just a terrific guy, terrific, terrific man. And Stan represents the robe part of our business and loungewear. So again, as I talked earlier, we don't cannibalize ourselves. Okay. And then, finishing up here, we have 10 brands that we talked to you about, 10 or 11, I lost track. But we also use that as a laboratory, and we have wonderful private label businesses that we're able to make. And we couldn't exist if we were just a private label company, and we couldn't exist if we were just a branded company. In this environment today, you need to be able to sell intelligently. You need to be able to sell top to bottom. I mean, we sell Neiman Marcus and Saks, and we sell JCPenney, obviously American Living. And we sell Chaps to Kohl's. So you need to be able to sell up and down the distribution cycle today to basically, I think, stay in business. So that's, when we talk about our unique model, our selling model and our business model, we talk about the multiple brand portfolio, but that then relates to our ability to sell effectively and intelligently at many, many different distribution levels. Okay. I urge everybody to go to the Carole Hochman website and learn a little bit more about our company. I am sure that if we hired 9 interns from FIT last year, my guess is a couple of these faces at some point in the next year I might see at Carole Hochman as well. I certainly hope so. You guys are our lifeline, and I don't want to not emphasize that enough. We recognize that our intern program and what we do in bringing young people in is the lifeline of our design and our merchandising and our production and sourcing. This I'll close with. This is that list I told when I said to you guys the world has changed. There's about 6 or 7 or 8 of us in here who look at this list, and I can see Barry shaking his head there. I remember Gertz, and I remember this one. I'm going to ask Susan to do sort of the takeaway and show us where we are today. The world has changed in retail dramatically. If I was to do this on the apparel side, I could do the same thing. In the intimate apparel business, the companies that were here circa 1983 and circa 2008. So what is the point of this particular slide? Well, I guess it leads me to reflect a little bit on massive change on both sides of the aisle. God, I hate that term, both sides of the aisle, after watching these debates. But massive change, and there's more to come. There'll be more consolidation on both sides of the aisle, retail and apparel. Price will remain important, but it must, and I repeat, particularly to this group that's design and creative driven, it must remain about product first. It must remain about product. And that is just the most important thing that anybody can tell you guys, no matter who the speaker is. The companies that are built around creativity, quality, and innovation will survive. And those that try to win by price alone, in my humble estimation, will struggle. And that's really what our story's about. It's what my story's been about. The one thing I will tell you, because I think it's really important, it goes back to the beginning, and I'm going to close the circle on where I started. I talked about making choices about companies or industries or positions that you take and finding your comfort zone. And with that, at the end of the day, comes feeling passionate about what you do. I'd like to say every day, I'm always going to feel passionate about it every single day. There's going to be ups and downs. But for the most part, if you can wake up and feel good about where you're going to work and what your job is and what your contribution can be and what your opportunities can be, then you found your comfort zone. Now, it may not be that you're going to stay at that company forever and ever and ever. I'm the antithesis. I've had 3 jobs in my life, so I'm far below that average of 12 to 14. But I don't think everybody that has 12 to 14 jobs really sets out to have 12 to 14 jobs. We all want to find that comfort zone. So I'm lucky enough to tell you that despite everything that's going on around us today, I'm still passionate about what I do 30 years later. I like it. I like the industry. I like the people. And I like my retail partners as well. I mean, they have a tough job today too. A very, very tough job. But, you know, we all have to be in it together, and we have to work towards making that term partner or partnership be a reality. And if it is, we will all get through this on both sides. And I look forward to many of you being a part of certainly the apparel industry, and hopefully some of you will be part of the intimate apparel industry. And I thank you for your time and your attention. Alice has told me to leave some time for questions, and I'm happy to do that. So if anybody has anything that I can add to what I said, yes, sir. Change the name? Change the name of the company? The company was originally called Chevette. And because Carole had become such an integral part of the company from 1968 to 1980, when it was bought back, and she happened to be married to the owner, Neil Hochman, they changed the name of the company to give Carole the credit that she deserved as the design leader of the company. So that's why it was changed. Interesting pickup that you made there. Anybody else? I was scared shitless. I was 29. I had gotten married a year before. I had a daughter who was less than 1 year old at that point. And I was lucky in that, again, it was a family business. I had an older brother with me, and we ran the business together. But, you know, I was scared on some levels, but I also will tell you that I feel the statement I made about being prepared and being ready, I did feel I was ready. I was scared of how to do it and that I might make a mistake, but I was prepared, and I felt the balance between the fear and being ready, you know, kept me on target. Yes. Absolutely. I think anybody that tells you it hasn't is lying through their teeth. I made a statement at the last speaking engagement I had with Roz's business that I've been in this industry for 26 years, and it is clearly the worst that I've ever seen. And it goes to the fact that I really look at what we're dealing with right now as what I like to call a perfect storm. In 1987, yeah, we had a stock issue and we had a savings and loan issue, but we weren't at war. The term subprime didn't mean anything other than you heard the word prime number in your algebra class. You know, nobody knew what that meant. We didn't have any of these things going on. We have a perfect storm right now of a lot of issues. And a government that, and I'm not going to get political, believe me, a government that has failed us on some level in the last 8 years, regardless of Democrat or Republican. So we need to fix this. And we are in an industry, particularly us, we're not high on the must-have list. You don't need to go out and buy a new nightgown. You don't need to go out and buy a new robe. You may need some new bras, and you may need some new panties, but you may not need as many in your drawer as you might have had 6 months ago or a year ago. So it is clearly impacting. Historically, the intimate apparel and sleepwear department always did better than the rest of the store in recessionary periods. That's not happening this time. So that's an instructive lesson for me to see, and I've heard it from many people, including the stores themselves. So this is a bit of a different ball game we're sitting in right now. I think there'll be a Christmas. There's always a Christmas. Will it be as good as last year? No, but last year wasn't so good either. So we're in for a good 12 to 18 months of tough sledding, I think. But again, to close the circle back to the group we're here with, it makes it more important that we remain creative, we remain aggressive in doing new products, new brands, new things, because in this environment, you've got to give the consumer something more compelling than they have right now. You've got to give them a reason to open their pocketbook when they know in their heart they ought to keep their pocketbook closed right now, because it is not a must-have. So hopefully I answered your question. Sure. It's a tough subject to take on, as we know, Karen, right? You've written many articles on chargebacks over the years, so I'm not going to really delve into it too much. There are some that are worse than others. You know, we have some customers that are not a problem at all with it, and there are some that are worse than others. But that's probably like any business, you know, that it works that way. Is it as cancerous as it used to be? No, it really isn't. I think it's become easier to monitor, you know, with the advent of Sarbanes-Oxley several years ago and some of the suits that have taken place. I think that it's a lot more on the up and up than it's been. So we have lots of concerns and worries within our business. This used to be really high on the list. It's probably not quite as high as some of the other things. Okay. Yes, there's no question that one of our goals as a company is to do more intimates business, and the growth of Betsy Johnson, the growth of Gossamer, Chaps. We will be adding intimates to as well. We'll introduce that at Kohl's, next May. So you're absolutely right on. It's certainly important that we as a company are trying to balance ourselves out and be a more important presence in the intimates business. And we're making very good strides in that arena right now. Very good strides. We've become an important force in that area.
What is the process when it comes to adding new business as far as new designers, new brands, or private label accounts to the Carole Hochman Design Group?
Well, we've been very unique in our design business for a long time, because we've even though we're this company of Carole Hochman Design Group, we've maintained really 10 or 11 holistic businesses. Every business has its own design team. So as we hire designers, if you come in to work in Betsy Johnson, the expectation is that you are going to embrace and live and understand and learn Betsy Johnson, and that's what you're going to design. We don't cross over. Somebody who designs Betsy Johnson isn't going to design Ralph Lauren. That's not healthy. That's not the smart way to do it. Put somebody, round peg in a round hole. You have a Ralph Lauren mindset. You have a Ralph Lauren aesthetic. That's where we want to utilize you. So that's really the way we've dealt with our design over the years. Okay. Yes. Retail planners? We do. And one of the things that I've instituted in the last couple of years, and on our side, what we call them is retail analysts. And what those analysts do, they've become a very, very important part of the process now, because we have to really work with our retailers to co-manage their business. They're dealing with 50 different brands. We have a salesperson and a planner or an analyst that works with those teams, those buying teams, to really dig into their business and understand it. They're involved in obviously the planning of assortments, assortment flow, buy plans, door plans. Something as simple as we've learned that sometimes less is more. You think that, boy, I'd like to sell 40 doors to this customer, but you can't make any money in 40 doors. You're probably better off being in 30 doors. But which 30 doors? That planner, that analyst needs to dig into the business to the depth that is necessary today to make sure we're putting the right product in the right place at the right time. If not, then you have that dreaded word, which is called markdowns. And we hate that word. So yes, planning, forecasting, retail analysis, probably in the last few years has become a very, very important part of our business, and I think anybody's business that's worth their salt. Yes.
Any tips or advice to the students who will be learning to achieve the next couple months to the
It's going to be tough. I think that I would be misleading you to tell you that companies are not going to be looking hard at their overhead and their personnel, but you guys are in a great place on the other side, so I don't want you to hang your head when I say what I first said. You're in a great place because, particularly with companies like ours, we need, and the industry needs, new ideas. Always needs new ideas. Needs new creativity, needs new energy, needs people who are going to think outside the box a little bit. So there will always be room, I think, in any company, again, that's worth their salt, when you can find young, talented, energetic people that really want to be involved and really want to get their arms around a business. There will be homes for them. So despite the economy, I think there will be great opportunity for you guys at the end of the day. It will not be all over the place because there are less companies today, and I think there will be less companies a year or two from now. So be smart about who you look at. Do your research. Really do your research about the companies so that you don't get surprised when you go in there. I've seen it several times when a young person comes in and they come back into our HR office or they come back to me or so. God, it's not really what I thought. And you then ask them, well, what homework did you do? What's the research you did? Who did you talk to? What's the information that you got? And sometimes you find that they just took the job. And sometimes that isn't the answer. I know you want to work, and you have to work. You live in New York City, you got a rent to pay, you got a lot of things to do. But make sure, again, I've said it several times, find the right place, find your comfort zone, and do your research. I had a feeling. It's a small world. It's the old 6 degrees of separation. We buy fabric from Colombia. We make product in Pakistan. 2 of our largest customers are in Mexico, Liverpool, Palacios de Hierro. So it's a small world in its own way too. It's all connected. Listen, it's very important to have an international bent today. To speak multiple languages does not hurt, believe me. So take advantage of all of those things that you have additionally. Anybody have anything else? Okay. Thank you all very much for your attention.
There's a book here of the, that you might, a precious catalog of Carole Hochman Design Group. If you want, there's one copy here, you can all come and look at it. Betsy Johnson, Oscar, they're all in here. So if you wish to look at it, it's here. One here and one here.
prophet. She made no sense. She was a genius. Her name is Deanna Breeden. Deanna Breeden. This woman, she would allow herself to be totally unconscious of her advertisers and her advertisers' dollars on her Christmas issue. And I show my staff sometimes, look at this issue, a 1964 Christmas issue, where she sent Lord Snowden to photograph horses. And then the next couple of pages are these great temples in Moscow, and she had Pauline de Rothschild write articles. And then she had Saint Laurent make her, just for the issue, chartreuse, big satin ball gowns. It was about genius and creativity. And half of the time you didn't know what she was talking about, it's all true. But she had such style and vision. She was a visionary. And she was the greatest editor that we ever had. She, and my other pick is Carole Snow. Carole Snow was at Harper's Bazaar, and she was different. She was quiet. She was discreet. Always made Boucher or Balenciaga. Those are the two. And in my lifetime, when I worked with, there was a woman by the name of Igor who was the firm fabricator at Harper's Bazaar. And she was one of my best friends. Yes. Who's that? Yeah. We're talking about a woman who I always say she taught me the importance of chalk brown. She did. Just quickly, I don't want to bore you, but this is somebody from the past that after Mrs. Breeden was fired from Harper's Bazaar, Igor had the character to say, I'm not staying here, so she left and she quit. And she went on to become a consultant, and her big thing, this is the part that you'll like and you'll remember her. She brought two young Italian boys to this country, and she introduced them to Mrs. Engelhardt, and Mrs. Onassis, and Mrs. Pelly. And those two men were Valentino Garavani and Giancarlo Giamatti. And that's Eve's big claim to fame. She introduced Valentino to the world. But she was a great editor and a great friend of mine. Thanks for asking that question, because I miss those girls so much. I talk to them. The pictures in my office, I just talk to them.
So there I was, I come in, and I'm so impressed with her. So I went out and wore the hat and the black dress to look like her. And we had the Johnson design team come in, and there I am in the hat and trying to be like Igor and little. So, like a year later,
consistently keeping me reminded of the fact that none of this is possible unless I'm surrounded by my tribe, my people, and their efforts. So that's why I did what I did with that. Yes?
Thinking of the importance of the persona of a designer, how it influences the consumer, professional, or the design about Tina, or in Carole Hochman have a certain look about them. And but for example, about yeah, they look like a kid from everyone. But what do you think? Do you think that's important? And how do you use that?
So beautiful question. See, what's so great about that is because personal style is like an avalanche. You can't miss it. It's just in front of you. You have it. The way you just spoke and asked that question shows me that you have it. And what do I think about it? I think it's one of the most refreshing, admirable, necessary ingredients for a human being to present themselves with style and original grace. I think it's essential. When people don't, then I worry. But yeah, that's what I think about. Yes.
What kind of advice can you give to fashion designers who are looking to start their own label as far as financial constraints and then marketing constraints?
Yeah.
Assuming that you started with nothing.
No, I did. I beg you not to start from nothing. You're going to have your heart broken. You will, it's just fact. But the thing is, it takes so much financial ability because you'll open your first seeds, the sample collection, we'll get through that. You sell it and you're shipping. Okay, as you're shipping, nothing is coming in. Now some people prepay or put up a deposit or something, but you're in an industry of very dishonest people. And sometimes we don't want it after it's made. So there's a loss there. So you can't foresee any of this. What I suggested earlier to somebody is to have some experience, gain some experience. And then while you're gaining the experience, think about a marketing plan of presenting yourself, and think about either an individual that you might know, individuals, a group of individuals that believe in you. But remember, once you take their money, it's a whole different relationship because money is a factor that eliminates friendship like that. So, and also, I hate to tell you this, but you live in my world also. There's no such thing as a bank giving any individual money for a startup business anymore. You see what's happening. People can't buy homes. We're in a horrible, horrible recessionary period. Especially if you walk into the bank and say, I am so divided. Look at this work. I'm going to start my own fashion business. Bye. So, I mean, when I was starting in the 70s, you had more leeway in people lending money or banks helping out. So I don't know what answer to give you. I wish I did. All I can say is get some experience first. So with the experience, you'll have a little more savvy ability to look. If you're going to do it, if it's meant, you're going to do it. Nothing is going to stand in your way. But it's just so important to realize that the financial hurdle could set you back emotionally. And that's what we don't want to happen.
What about if you were to create small collections to sell this to like special boutiques? Just to keep you know, the creativity of what you're doing alive in between.
Great. Yes, terrific idea. But the problem is, right now, perhaps it'll change, and I hope it will in 6 months, even those boutiques are carrying excess stock. So you need to be replenished every 6 months as you're supplying them for your cash flow. And if they don't need the replenishment, where is your cash flow? Because you're already making the merchandise. So, in Italian, piano, gradually, slowly. Yes.
How much of your creativity do you compromise with the business portion?
Nothing.
Profit.
Nothing. That's why I'm always in trouble. I suppose, a little bit of a mental disconnect with that word. It disallows This is the problem. I never had sort of the ease of the luck in my life to say, okay, I will do this, and this worked. And I was having all these setbacks continuously. So I realized I was sitting around in one-room studio apartments. I had been waiting for something to occur. And so I thought, no, this is not going to work for me. And that's why I showed the first collection in 1980. And I couldn't afford to. I pushed the rack to the hotel a little bit. I made and cut and designed the collection myself. But if you're so passionate, you can't contain it, you feel it inside, you'll just do it. And the universe and God helps you work it out. I'm convinced. I'm proof. It's a beautiful question because I always complain to those closest to me, especially the big collection. When we have the show in 3 weeks, I spend 90% of my time in business and 10% as a designer. It's terrible. Because then what happens is I have to rush and I have to prepare in a rush fab. I mean, I start fabric development and prints and artwork in advance. But when we're really doing it, and it's not fair tremendously on my staff because everybody's working around the clock, everybody's rushing. Emotions are raw, nerves. We try to make everybody laugh. But the business is such though I don't have a business partner. And so I have to be involved with everything, in every decision. And then the meetings that take so much time. So what I do, to answer your question specifically, I have a home that I love to go to as essential. To run home, I don't talk, I don't take the phone, I love my home. I exercise every day except Sunday, I sleep late. And I have dear friends that I see, and I have a wonderful English school dog. That's why. Are you ready? You know what his name is. My dog's name is Tom. Separate. I like to throw the design work totally at a spiritual level. So then I just take myself out of that whole equation. Yes.
Being a student right now, especially in the new students, more section and design jobs. And I know myself and my friends definitely enjoy, appreciate the history, fashion,
Yes.
art, arts, sculptural. So we hired you and we hired one of our game designers, since we're not EU citizens, we can come there and really work. Here is very hard to get internships and opportunities to design houses like yours.
That's not true. We have so many young people that come from FIT and from Parsons and other schools and intern with us. No, we always groom and take young people in, especially, there's one young girl in my office, Samantha, and she screens all the people. And don't be afraid of that. I heard you say that, but this young lady was just saying, did everyone hear her statement? She was talking about how she appreciates a history of fashion and the arts that go along with it, and she feels sometimes that it's almost a defeatist possibility because she cannot get a work visa, or he also says that maybe go to Europe. You can do anything you want.
Well, also with it, it's a point that you also got
Pucci. There is a man, his name is Ralph Pucci, and he has a furniture collection and mannequins. He designs mannequins. And we're often, we've never met, but people always say that, oh, you're a new collection of furniture. And I'm a closet case decorator, so I would love to do it. I would love to go into the home division. I would, but slowly, because again, you're in an area, and I've already done some consultant work with people who are more than I. You're in an area, and if we're going to work on high quality products for the home, where do you make? Okay, so then you go to a little boutique company, and then they can't supply you fast enough. And then where do you sell them? Where do you distribute? So then inevitably just takes, there is no money to be made in an area like that, unless you become let's say a small division with a big company like McGuire Furniture or big companies. But I would love to. I would love to go into the home and linens and things like that. Yes. Together.
And then later on, he said, I'm not part of the industry. I'm so curious to know how you position yourself in your own work.
Good question. When I first started out, I wanted to do everything by the book. I sought audiences with the certain editors at the moment and retailers that existed, and I had a very, very difficult time being let in. And I had to figure out, if I were going to remain in the business, how to do it my own way, because pursuing it in that way wasn't working. So I had already felt, not just decided, I was in this position of being alone within this industry. And I pursued exactly what I wanted to pursue. And we built the business very, very gradually. And we built it through the help of Neiman Marcus, not buying clothes. Yes, they did. The way we really built the business is I would do all of the trunk shows myself. You know what trunk shows are? Where you take the entire collection to a given city. And that's where I built the relationship with clients that over the years brought more and more trust. Thus, when I grew, used better fabrics, more complication, and the clothes became so expensive, this is how I amassed an audience. And it was through the kindness of one woman. There was a fashion director at Neiman Marcus. Her name was Joan Kaner. And she was my great angel. And she introduced us to Neiman Marcus, and that's how we grew the business. Now, where we are right now is a place that we're trying to define and to understand, because I don't quite know. We have a business. It needs to expand. It needs to expand with control. And what we're trying to do is, by editor to editor, re-evaluating what we think about them and presenting ourselves to them so they could have a renewed idea of what I'm about. Because in the process, I alienated some people. And that's very disturbing. I didn't alienate out of intention. I didn't alienate. It occurred because of survival. I couldn't afford a cutter or a shipping agent. So I would cut all of my clothes all night long, or ship boxes all night long. And I wouldn't politically play with the process. It was a negative event there. But we're trying to make corrections about the way I'm perceived. That's a very good question.
I think you're very generous, not only trying to make corrections for your work, it seems like you're trying to make corrections for anyone else and giving whatever
I have to. You're right, I have to. It's my responsibility. Because there are specific situations that occurred in my life that if I don't help others in our profession and share, I'm a disgrace. essential. And you know something? You might want to think about that. Yeah, as something very individual for you to pursue with your studies in accessories. Yes?
With the way things have become so homogenized in the market, like, have you, like, for example, I don't know if you read the book Deluxe,
Yeah.
and, well, I was thinking about how would you preserve your own name after you're no longer a designer? Have you thought about that?
That's a very good question. Yes, I have, because I had to, of course, do a will and foundation, all that sort of thing. I don't believe that a house can continue after the nucleus of designer and the participants are no longer, because that's what the house meant. And I'll just give you an example. I think the work that Riccardo Tisci is doing in Givenchy is quite wonderful, that on a moral level, there's a great living legend that isn't being treated with the correct respect. So it's as if I were to be cremated or someone. If something happens to me, there's no longer a house. But the one thing that we are going to continue, and I was adamant after all these years to finally get it right, is the fragrance. We have the fragrance, and that will continue. We're getting kicked out because of the union.
But the formality, the life,
The unions.
for Anna's big film of you up there, you see? So she has to go. I'm talking like that because I.
Do you want us to do more questions? Because this is just getting turned. So we'll continue.